Marcus "Tank" Thompson lay dying in a Phoenix hospital bed, his weathered hands shaking as he made one final request. For 2 years, he and his German shepherd Gunner had survived together on the streets. But when cancer forced Tank to give up, his beloved companion 3 months ago, he thought he'd never see those loyal brown eyes again. Now, with only days left to live, Tank asked Nurse Sarah Chen for the impossible. Find Gunner and bring him home one last time. What started as a desperate search through dozens of animal shelters would become a miracle that touched hearts across America and proved that love truly can conquer anything. This is their story. The morning sun cast long shadows through the windows of Phoenix Veterans Medical Center. Outside, the desert city was waking up to another February day in 2024. Inside room 314, Marcus "Tank" Thompson lay propped up in his hospital bed, watching the light dance across the white walls. Tank's weathered. Hands shook as he reached for the water cup on his bedside table. At 58 years old, he looked much older. His brown hair had turned gray. Deep lines marked his face like a road map of hard times. The cancer was winning, and everyone knew it. "Good morning, Tank," said Sarah Chen, his favorite nurse. She walked into the room with her usual warm smile. Sarah had kind eyes behind her glasses. She always took extra time with Tank, even when she was busy. "Morning, Sarah," Tank replied. His voice was rough and quiet. Speaking took effort now. Sarah checked Tank's chart and adjusted his pillows. She had been caring for Tank for 3 weeks. In that time, she learned that he had no visitors. No family called. No friends stopped by. Tank faced his final days alone. "How are you feeling today?" Sarah asked as she checked his IV line. Tank tried to smile. "Been better," he said. Then, his expression changed. His eyes filled with tears. "Sarah, can I ask you something?" "Of course," she said, pulling up a chair beside his bed. Tank took a shaky breath. "I know I don't have much time left. The doctor told me yesterday. Maybe 2 weeks." Sarah felt her heart break a little. She had seen many patients die. But Tank was special. He was always polite and grateful. He never complained, even when the pain was bad. "I have one last wish," Tank continued. "I want to see my dog again. His name is Gunner. He's a German shepherd." Sarah listened carefully. She had heard Tank mention Gunner before, but she thought the dog had died. "Where is Gunner now?" she asked gently. Tank's tears started falling. "I don't know. I had to give him up when I got too sick. It was 3 months ago. I took him to a shelter, but I can't remember which one. I was so confused that day." Tank wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. "Gunner and I lived together on the streets for 2 years, under the Central Avenue Bridge mostly. Sometimes in Steel Indian School Park when the weather was nice." Sarah knew about Phoenix's homeless problem. The city had over 1,000 veterans, sleeping outside every night. Arizona's hot summers and cold winters made street life dangerous. "Gunner protected me out there," Tank said. "When bad people came around, he would growl and stand in front of me. He shared his food with me when I was hungry. That dog saved my life more times than I can count." Tank's voice got stronger as he talked about his dog. "He's got these brown eyes that look right into your soul. Black and tan fur with white on his chest. About 80 pounds. The smartest dog you ever saw." Sarah could see how much Gunner meant to Tank. This wasn't just about a pet. This was about family. "Tell me more about how you two ended up together," Sarah said. Tank's face lit up a little. "I found him at the Arizona Humane Society in 2020. I wasn't looking for a dog. I was just walking by and saw him through the fence. 3 years old then. The workers said 3 families had returned him. Too energetic, they said. Too protective. Tank laughed, which turned into a cough. Sarah helped him sip some water. But when I looked at Gunnar, I saw something different. He sat like a soldier at attention. His ears were up, listening. He reminded me of the dogs we had in Afghanistan. Working dogs that understood their job. Tank had served 3 tours in Afghanistan between 2003 and 2009. Sarah could see his military records on the computer. Bronze Star Medal. Purple Heart. He had been a combat medic, saving lives under fire. I used my last $200 to adopt him, Tank continued. Best money I ever spent. For 2 years, we were never apart. Not for one day. Sarah felt tears in her own eyes. She thought about her father, who had served in Vietnam. He struggled with nightmares and depression for years after coming home. What happened when you got sick? Sarah asked. Tank's face fell. I started coughing up blood in December. I knew something was wrong, but I didn't want to leave Gunnar. We tried sleeping in doorways to stay warm, but I got sicker and sicker. Tank stared at the ceiling. Finally, I couldn't take care of him anymore. I could barely take care of myself. So I walked him to a shelter and left him there. I told the worker that someone would come back for him, but I knew it was a lie. Sarah could see the guilt eating at Tank. You did what you had to do, she said. You were trying to keep Gunnar safe. I promised him I'd come back, Tank whispered. Dogs don't understand why people leave them. He's probably still waiting for me. Sarah made a decision. She didn't know how, but she was going to help Tank find Gunnar. Tank, I'm going to try to find him, she said. I can't promise anything, but I'll make some calls. Tank grabbed Sarah's hand with surprising strength. Really? You'd do that for me? Yes, Sarah said firmly. Everyone deserves to say goodbye to the ones they love. Tank cried harder now, but these were tears of hope mixed with sadness. He's all the family I have left. My parents died years ago. Never married. No kids. Just me and Gunnar against the world. Sarah looked at Tank's military decorations hanging on the wall. This man had served his country with honor. He had saved other soldiers' lives. But when he came home, the system failed him. He ended up homeless and alone. Over 1,000 veterans lived on Phoenix streets. Many struggled with PTSD, job loss, and medical problems. Tank's story was not unusual, but that made it even sadder. Sarah, Tank said quietly, even if you can't find him, thank you for caring. Nobody has cared about me in a long time. Sarah squeezed Tank's hand. I'm going to find Gunnar, she said, and you're going to see him again. As Sarah left Tank's room, she pulled out her phone. Phoenix had dozens of animal shelters and rescue groups. Finding one German Shepherd seemed impossible. But Sarah had seen the love in Tank's eyes when he talked about Gunnar. This was more than a dying man's wish. This was about keeping a promise to a loyal friend who had given everything for his human. Sarah started dialing the first shelter. She didn't know if Gunnar was still alive. She didn't know if they could find him in time. But she was going to. Try. Tank deserved that much. Tank closed his eyes and let his mind drift back to better days. Days when he had a job and a home. Days before everything fell apart. It was 2022 when Tank's world started crashing down. He worked as a security guard at a shopping mall in Tempe. The pay wasn't great, but it was enough for his small apartment on McDowell Road. Tank liked the job because it reminded him of his military service. He protected people and kept them safe. But the nightmares never stopped. Even 12 years after leaving Afghanistan, Tank still woke up screaming. He saw faces of soldiers he couldn't save. He heard explosions that weren't really there. The high, doctors called it PTSD. Tank called it hell. Some nights, Tank couldn't sleep at all. He would sit on his apartment balcony, watching the desert sky. Those were the times he missed his army buddies the most. In Afghanistan, they understood each other. They watched each other's backs. But in Phoenix, Tank was alone with his memories. The IQ. Mall cut Tank's hours in late 2022. Business was slow, they said. They only needed him 3 days a week instead of 5. Tank's paycheck got smaller, but his rent stayed the same. Tank tried to find another job, but employers saw his age and his shaky hands. They heard the sadness in his voice. Nobody wanted to hire a broken-down veteran with problems. In America, about 37,000 veterans are homeless on any given night. Most of them, like Tank, struggle with mental health issues and job loss. The system that trained them to be soldiers forgot to teach them how to be civilians. By January 2023, Tank couldn't pay his rent anymore. His landlord was nice at first. He gave Tank extra time. But after 3 months, the eviction notice came. Tank had to leave his apartment with just 2 bags of clothes and nowhere to go. That's when Tank remembered the Arizona Humane Society. He had driven past it many times on his way to work. Something always made him slow down and look at the dogs in the outdoor runs. On a cold Tuesday morning, Tank walked through the shelter doors. He told himself he was just looking. He couldn't afford a dog. He didn't even have a home. But then he saw Gunner. The German Shepherd sat perfectly still in his kennel. His black and tan coat was shiny and clean. His brown eyes were alert and intelligent. But there was something sad about him too. Like he was waiting for someone who never came. "That's Max," said Jenny, a young shelter worker. "He's been here for 2 months. 3 different families have returned him." "Why?" Tank asked. Jenny sighed. "They say he's too much work, too protective, too loyal." One family said he wouldn't let strangers in their house. Another said he followed their kids everywhere, like he was guarding them. Tank knelt down by the kennel. Gunner came over and pressed his nose against the chain-link fence. The dog's tail wagged slowly, like he was being careful not to seem too eager. "What's his real name?" Tank asked. "We don't know," Jenny said. "He came in as a stray. No collar, no tags. We've been calling him Max, but he doesn't really answer to it." Tank looked into Gunner's eyes. The dog looked back with an expression Tank recognized. It was the same look he saw on young soldiers' faces in Afghanistan. Alert but tired. Ready to serve but needing someone to trust. "Hey there, soldier," Tank whispered. Gunner's ears perked up. His tail wagged faster. "I think he likes you," Jenny said, surprised. "He doesn't usually warm up to people this quickly." Tank spent 2 hours at the shelter that day. He played with Gunner in the yard. The dog followed Tank's commands like he had been trained. "Sit, stay, come, down." Gunner obeyed perfectly. "He's special," Jenny told Tank. "I think he's looking for someone who understands him." Tank knew he couldn't afford a dog. He had $23 in his wallet and nowhere to live. But looking at Gunner, Tank saw something he hadn't seen in years. Hope. "How much is the adoption fee?" Tank asked. $200, Jenny said. "That includes his shots and neutering." Tank's heart sank. He didn't have that much money. Jenny must have seen the disappointment on Tank's face. Are you a veteran? She asked. Tank nodded. We have a program for veterans, Jenny said quietly. Sometimes we can work out payment plans. Tank pulled out his wallet and counted his money. $23. Then he remembered his emergency fund. He had $200 hidden in his apartment for rent. But he was getting evicted anyway. I'll take him, Tank said. An hour later, Tank walked out of the Arizona Humane Society with Gunner on a leash. He had spent his last money on a dog he couldn't afford to feed. But as they walked down the street together, Tank felt something he hadn't felt in years. He wasn't alone anymore. That first night, Tank and Gunner slept in Steele Indian School Park. Tank made a bed out of cardboard under a big tree. Gunner curled up next to him, sharing his warmth. I don't know what I'm doing, boy, Tank whispered to his new friend. But we'll figure it out together. For the next 2 years, Tank and Gunner became a team. They learned the rules of street life, where to find food, where to sleep safely, how to avoid trouble. Gunner was the perfect street dog. He was big enough to scare away dangerous people, but gentle enough to approach families for help. The dog seemed to know when Tank was having a bad day. During Tank's worst PTSD episodes, Gunner would press against him and refuse to leave his side. They had a routine. Wake up at sunrise. Look for food. Find a safe place to spend the day. Look for more food. Find a safe place to sleep. Every day was about survival. Tank always fed Gunner first, even when he was hungry. The dog needed to stay strong. Gunner was Tank's protector and his only family. Under the Central Avenue Bridge, they met other homeless people. Some were veterans like Tank. Others were families who lost their homes. Everyone looked out for each other the best they could. Tank's favorite spot was near the bridge's east side. There was a small area hidden from the road where he and Gunner could sleep without being bothered. Tank hung a tarp between 2 support beams to block the wind. It wasn't much, but it was home. During the day, Tank and Gunner would walk around Phoenix looking for work. Tank did odd jobs when he could find them. Moving furniture, cleaning yards, anything that paid cash. Gunner waited patiently while Tank worked. People were usually kind to them. Families would give Tank food or water. Kids loved petting Gunner, who was always gentle with children. The dog seemed to understand that he was representing all homeless people. He had to be on his best behavior. But Phoenix winters were cold, and summers were dangerous. Temperatures could reach 115 degrees. Tank and Gunner had to find shade and water to survive. Sometimes they slept in 24-hour laundromats or hospital waiting rooms. Through it all, they had each other. But in December 2023, everything changed. Tank started coughing up blood. Back in the present at Phoenix Veterans Medical Center, Sarah Chen sat at the nurse's station with her phone in her hand. She had promised Tank she would find Gunner, but now she wondered if she had made a promise she couldn't keep. Phoenix had dozens of animal shelters. The Arizona Humane Society was the biggest, but there were also smaller rescue groups all over the city. Maricopa County Animal Care and Control had multiple locations: private rescues, breed-specific groups, foster networks. Where would she even start? Sarah dialed the Arizona Humane Society first. It was the most likely place Tank would have taken Gunner. "Hello, this is Sarah Chen from Phoenix Veterans Medical Center," she said, when someone answered. "I'm looking for a German Shepherd that was brought in about 3 months ago. His name is Gunner." The woman on the phone was helpful, but had bad news. "I can check our records, but we get a lot of German Shepherds. Do you have any other information?" Sarah described Gunner based on what Tank had told her. Black and tan coat, brown eyes, about 80 pounds, well-trained, brought in by a homeless veteran in December. After 10 minutes on hold, the woman came back. "I'm sorry, but I don't see any dog matching that description in our system. He might have been transferred to another facility, or he could have been adopted already." Sarah's heart sank. She thanked the woman and hung up. Dr. James Rodriguez walked up to the nurses' station. He was Tank's doctor, a kind man in his 40s who had served in the Navy before becoming a physician. "How's Tank doing today?" Sarah asked. "Not good," Dr. Rodriguez said sadly. "His breathing is getting worse. The cancer is spreading faster than we hoped." Sarah told Dr. Rodriguez about Tank's request to see Gunner. She explained her plan to search for the dog. Dr. Rodriguez was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "My father was a Vietnam veteran. He died, alone in a VA hospital in California. No family, no friends. I always regretted that we couldn't do more for him." Dr. Rodriguez looked at Tank's chart. "If finding this dog can bring Tank some peace in his final days, then we need to help him. I'll make some calls too." Sarah felt grateful for Dr. Rodriguez's support. Together, they started making a list of every animal shelter and rescue group. In the Phoenix area, Sarah called the Maricopa County Animal Care and Control Shelter on 27th Avenue. No luck. She tried the East Valley Animal Shelter in Mesa. Nothing. Each phone call took time, and Tank was running out of time. During her lunch break, Sarah drove to 3 different shelters in person. She showed them Tank's photo of Gunner on his phone. The workers were nice, but nobody remembered seeing the dog. Sarah started to feel hopeless. How could one dog just disappear? That afternoon, Dr. Rodriguez had an idea. What if we make flyers with Gunner's photo? We could post them around the city. Sarah loved the idea. She used Tank's phone to get the best photo of Gunner. In the picture, the German Shepherd sat proudly next to Tank under the Central Avenue Bridge. Both of them looked happy despite their hard life. Sarah created a simple flyer on her computer. It had Gunner's photo and description. At the bottom, it said, "Dying veteran seeks beloved dog. Please help reunite them." Dr. Rodriguez helped Sarah make copies at the hospital. They printed 50 flyers and planned to post them around Phoenix after work. But Sarah had another idea. She remembered seeing local news stories about lost pets being reunited with their families. Maybe the media could help. Sarah called KPHO-TV, the CBS station in Phoenix. She explained Tank's situation to a producer named Mike Chen. No relation to Sarah, despite the same last name. "That's a heartbreaking story," Mike said. "Let me talk to my assignment editor. We might be able to do a short segment about it." An hour later, Mike called back. "We'd like to interview Tank this evening if he's up for it. Sometimes these stories on social media can help find missing pets." Sarah was excited but nervous. She didn't want to get Tank's hopes up if nothing came of it. Meanwhile, across town at Second Chance Animal Rescue, volunteer Maria Santos was finishing her evening shift. Maria had worked with homeless pet owners before. She knew how much these animals meant to people who had lost everything else. Maria was a retired teacher who spent her free time helping animals. At 62, she had gray hair and kind eyes behind her reading glasses. She had volunteered at Second Chance for 5 years. As Maria was cleaning kennels, she stopped at one particular dog's cage. Inside was a beautiful German Shepherd with black and tan fur. The dog had been at the rescue for 3 months, and Maria worried about him. "Hey there, Max," Maria said softly. The rescue had named him Max because he came with no identification. The dog looked up at Maria with sad brown eyes. He was healthy and well-behaved, but something was wrong. Max barely ate. He didn't play with toys. He spent most of his time lying by the kennel door, like he was waiting for someone. 3 families had tried to adopt Max. The first family returned him after 2 weeks because he wouldn't bond with them. The second family said he was too depressed. The third family brought him back because Max refused to eat and kept trying to escape. Maria had seen this before with dogs who had been abandoned. They mourned their lost owners just like people mourned lost family members. "I wish I knew what happened to your family," Maria told Max. "You're such a good boy. Someone must be missing you." Max's ears perked up at the word family. His tail wagged slightly, which was more emotion than Maria had seen from him in weeks. Maria noticed that Max wore an old collar with military patches on it. She had always wondered about that collar. It looked like something a veteran might have. As Maria was about to leave for the night, her phone buzzed. She had notifications from several Facebook groups for lost pets in Phoenix. People were sharing a new post about a missing German Shepherd. Maria opened Facebook and saw the flyer Sarah had created. The photo showed a German Shepherd sitting next to a homeless man under a bridge. Maria's heart started racing. The dog in the photo looked exactly like Max. Same black and tan markings, same intelligent brown eyes, same size and build. Maria ran back to Max's kennel. She looked at the dog more carefully, comparing him to the photo on her phone. "Oh my goodness," Maria whispered. "Max, is your real name Gunner?" The dog's entire body tensed. His ears shot up. His tail started wagging faster than Maria had ever seen. "Gunner?" Maria said again. The German Shepherd started whining and pawing at the kennel door. He spun in circles, more excited than he had been in 3 months. Maria's hands shook as she dialed the phone number from the flyer. Sarah answered on the second ring. "Hello, this is Maria Santos from Second Chance Animal Rescue," Maria said, her voice trembling with excitement. "I think I might have your dog." Sarah almost dropped her phone. "Are you sure?" "I have a German Shepherd that matches your description perfectly. He's been here for 3 months. He came with no name, but when I said Gunner, he went crazy with excitement." Sarah felt tears in her eyes. "We'll be right there." "There's one more thing," Maria said. "This dog has been heartbroken since he arrived. He won't eat much. He won't play. It's like he's been mourning someone. I think he's been waiting for his owner to come back." Sarah's voice cracked as she said, "His owner has been waiting too." After hanging up, Sarah ran to find Dr. Rodriguez. They needed to get to Second Chance Animal Rescue immediately. Tank didn't know about this development yet. They wanted to be absolutely sure before telling him. But as Sarah and Dr. Rodriguez headed for the parking garage, Sarah felt hope for the first time since Tank made his request. Maybe miracles really did happen. Maybe Tank would get to see Gunner again after all. The search that seemed impossible just a few hours ago was about to end. Sarah's hands gripped the steering wheel tightly as she drove through Phoenix traffic. Dr. Rodriguez sat in the passenger seat, both of them quiet with nervous hope. Second Chance Animal Rescue was 20 minutes away on the east side of the city. "What if it's not him?" Sarah asked, voicing the fear they both shared. "Then we keep looking," Dr. Rodriguez said firmly. "But something tells me this is going to work out." The rescue facility was smaller than Sarah expected. It sat on a dusty lot surrounded by chain-link fencing. Several dogs barked as they pulled into the gravel parking area. Sarah could see kennels lined up behind the main building. Maria Santos met them at the front door. She was a small woman with gray hair and worried eyes. Sarah could tell Maria cared deeply about the animals here. "Thank you so much for coming," Maria said, leading them inside. I have to warn you, this dog has been through a lot. He's not the same happy animal in your photo." They walked through the rescue building. Sarah saw cats in cages, smaller dogs in indoor kennels, and photos of adopted animals on the walls. This was clearly a place run by people who loved animals. "Tell us about how he came to you," Dr. Rodriguez said. Maria led them toward the back door. "A homeless man brought him in 3 months ago, December 15th. The man was very sick, coughing badly. He said someone would come back for the dog, but he couldn't take care of him anymore." Sarah's heart raced. December 15th was exactly when Tanky said he gave up Gunner. "The man was crying when he left," Maria continued. "He kept hugging the dog and saying he was sorry. We see that sometimes with homeless pet owners. They love their animals, but they can't care for them when they get sick." They stepped outside into the kennel area. Sarah saw about 15 dogs, of different sizes. Some barked excitedly when they saw visitors. Others lay quietly in their small spaces. Maria led them to a large kennel at the far end. Inside was a beautiful German Shepherd with black and tan fur. The dog looked up when they approached, but he didn't seem excited like the other dogs. "We call him Max," Maria said, "but he never really responds to that name." Sarah pulled out Tank's phone and looked at the photo again. The dog in the kennel looked exactly like Gunner. Same intelligent brown eyes, same white patch on his chest, same strong build. "It's him," Sarah whispered. "It has to be." Dr. Rodriguez studied the dog carefully. "He looks exactly like Tank described." The German Shepherd stood up slowly and walked to the front of his kennel. He sniffed the air, looking at Sarah and Dr. Rodriguez with curious eyes. "Gunner?" Sarah said softly. The dog's reaction was immediate and dramatic. His ears shot up. His tail started wagging so hard his whole body wiggled. He whined and pawed at the kennel door, trying to get closer to them. "Oh my God," Maria said, tears filling her eyes. "Look at him. I've never seen him react like that to anything." "Gunner, sit," Dr. Rodriguez said in a calm voice. The dog immediately sat at attention, just like Tank had described. His tail kept wagging, but he followed the command perfectly. "He's been trained," Sarah said, amazed. "Tank said Gunner knew all the basic commands." Maria unlocked the kennel door. Gunner rushed out but didn't jump on them. Instead, he sat politely and looked around, as if searching for someone else. "He's looking for Tank," Sarah realized. "He knows these aren't the people he's waiting for." Maria knelt down and petted Gunner's head. "This explains so much," she said. 3 families tried to adopt him, but he wouldn't bond with any of them. He barely ate. He spent all his time lying by the kennel door. "He was waiting," Dr. Rodriguez said. "He was waiting for Tank to come back." Sarah felt tears rolling down her cheeks. This loyal dog had been heartbroken for 3 months, not understanding why his owner never returned. "Tell us about the families who tried to adopt him," Sarah said. Maria sighed. "The first family kept him for 2 weeks. Nice people with a big house and yard, but Gunner wouldn't eat much. He wouldn't play with their kids. He just sat by their front door all day. The second family brought him back after 10 days, Maria continued. They said he was too sad. He wouldn't walk on the leash. He wouldn't sleep in the dog bed they bought him." "What about the third family?" Dr. Rodriguez asked. "That was the hardest," Maria said. "The Johnsons really wanted to help him. They're wealthy people from Scottsdale with a beautiful home. They took Gunner for 3 weeks and spent hundreds of dollars on toys and training." Maria scratched behind Gunner's ears. The dog leaned into her touch, but kept looking toward the parking lot. But Gunner wouldn't accept their love. Maria said sadly. He tried to escape twice. He howled at night. The Johnsons said it broke their hearts to return him, but they knew he belonged with someone else. Sarah understood. Gunner's heart belonged to Tank. No amount of money or comfort could replace that bond. He's been here ever since, Maria said. We were starting to think he might never find a home. Some dogs just can't get over losing their first family. Dr. Rodriguez checked his watch. We need to get him to Tank as soon as possible. Tank's condition is getting worse every day. Of course, Maria said quickly. Let me get his leash and his paperwork. As Maria went to get Gunner's things, Sarah knelt down beside the dog. Hey there, boy, she said gently. We're going to take you to see Tank. Gunner's ears perked up at Tank's name. He whined softly and licked Sarah's hand. He understands, Dr. Rodriguez said in amazement. He knows Tank's name. Maria returned with a leash and a folder of paperwork. Gunner's had all his shots, she said. He's healthy, just heartbroken. The vet said there's nothing physically wrong with him. Sarah clipped the leash to Gunner's collar. She noticed the military patches Maria had mentioned. One patch showed a medical cross. Another had the words Army Strong. Tank was a combat medic, Sarah explained. These patches probably came from his old uniform. They walked toward Sarah's car. Gunner followed obediently but kept looking around. Sarah could tell the dog was confused but hopeful. There's one more thing, Maria said as they reached the car. Yesterday, Gunner did something strange. A man walked by the fence, and Gunner got very excited. He barked and wagged his tail for the first time in weeks. What was special about the man? Dr. Rodriguez asked. He was older, maybe 50 or 60, Maria said. He walked with a limp, like he might be a veteran. Gunner watched him until he was completely out of sight. Sarah felt chills. Gunner had been looking for Tank all this time. Every older man reminded him of his missing owner. They helped Gunner into the back seat of Sarah's car. The dog sat perfectly still, like a soldier. Waiting for orders. Are you ready to see Tank? Sarah asked, looking at Gunner in the rearview mirror. The German Shepherd's tail thumped against the seat. His brown eyes were bright with anticipation for the first time in months. As they drove back toward the hospital, Sarah called Tank's room, but she didn't tell him about Gunner yet. She wanted this to be a complete surprise. How are you feeling, Tank? She asked when he answered. Been better, Tank said weakly. Did you have any luck finding Gunner? I'm still working on it, Sarah said, trying to keep the excitement out of her voice. Don't give up hope. After hanging up, Sarah looked at Gunner again. The dog was staring out the window, watching the Phoenix streets go by. Soon, very soon, this loyal friend would be reunited with the person he loved most. The impossible search was about to end with the most beautiful reunion. Tank was having his worst day yet. The pain in his chest felt like fire. His breathing was shallow and difficult. The medicine made him feel dizzy and confused. He lay in his hospital bed, staring at the ceiling and thinking about Gunner. I should never have given him up, Tank whispered to himself. He's probably scared and alone somewhere. Tank's biggest fear was that Gunner had been put to sleep at a shelter. Some places only kept dogs for a few days before making that terrible decision. The thought made Tank's heart hurt more than the cancer. Nurse Sarah had been trying to find Gunner for 2 days now. She always smiled when Tank asked about the search, but Tank could see the worry in her eyes. Phoenix was a huge city. Finding one dog seemed impossible. I just want to say goodbye, Tank said to the empty room. I want to tell him I'm sorry. Tank thought about their last morning together under the bridge. Gunner had brought him a half-eaten sandwich someone threw away. The dog always tried to take care of Tank, even when they both were hungry. "You were such a good boy," Tank said, tears rolling down his cheeks. "The best friend I ever had." Meanwhile, in the hospital parking garage, Sarah was having a different kind of emotional moment. She, Dr. Rodriguez, and Maria stood beside her car with Gunnar. The German Shepherd was alert and excited, like he knew something important was happening. "Remember," Dr. Rodriguez said, "Tank is very weak. We need to keep this calm and gentle." Sarah nodded. She was nervous about surprising Tank. What if the shock was too much for his sick heart? Gunnar has been waiting for this moment. "For 3 months, Maria said, petting the dog's head. "Look at his eyes. He knows where he is." Gunnar's tail wagged as they walked toward the hospital entrance. Several people stopped to admire the beautiful German Shepherd. But Gunnar only had eyes for the building ahead of him. At the front desk, Sarah explained the situation to the security guard. Hospitals usually didn't allow pets, but this was a special case. Dr. Rodriguez's authority as a physician helped convince the staff. "This is about compassion," Dr. Rodriguez told the guard. "Sometimes healing comes in unexpected forms." They took the elevator to the 3rd floor. Gunnar stood perfectly still during the ride, but Sarah could feel his excitement. The dog's whole body was tense with anticipation. "He knows," Sarah said quietly. "Somehow, he knows Tank is close." When the elevator doors opened, Gunnar's nose immediately went to work. He sniffed the air, sorting through all the hospital smells. Then his ears perked up. He had caught Tank's scent. Gunnar pulled gently toward Tank's room, but Sarah held the leash firmly. They needed to do this right. Outside room 314, Sarah stopped. Through the partly open door, she could hear Tank talking to himself. "I'm so sorry, Gunnar," Tank was saying. "I broke my promise to you. I said I'd always take care of you." Sarah felt her heart break. Tank was torturing himself with guilt and grief. Dr. Rodriguez knocked gently on the door. "Tank? It's Dr. Rodriguez. I have someone here who wants to see you." "I'm not really up for visitors," Tank said weakly. Sarah looked down at Gunnar. The dog was trembling with excitement. His brown eyes were locked on the door to Tank's room. "This is a very special visitor," Sarah called out. "Someone who's been looking for you." Tank was confused. He didn't have any friends or family. Who could be looking for him? "Can we come in?" Dr. Rodriguez asked. "I guess," Tank said. Sarah opened the door slowly. At first, she stepped inside alone, blocking Gunnar from Tank's view. Tank looked terrible. His face was pale and thin. His eyes were red from crying. But when he saw Sarah's huge smile, he looked puzzled. "Sarah, what's going on?" Tank asked. "Tank," Sarah said, her voice shaking with excitement. "I kept my promise." Sarah stepped aside, and Gunnar bounded into the room. For a moment, time seemed to stop. Tank's eyes went wide with shock and disbelief. Gunnar froze in the middle of the room, staring at his owner. "Gunnar?" Tank whispered, like he was afraid he was dreaming. The German Shepherd's entire body started shaking. He whined softly, a sound of pure joy mixed with 3 months of heartbreak. But he didn't move. He was waiting for permission. "Is it really you, boy?" Tank asked, his voice cracking. That was all Gunnar needed to hear. He rushed to Tank's bedside, but he was careful not to jump on the bed. Instead, he gently placed his front paws on the mattress and stretched up to reach his owner. Tank wrapped his arms around Gunnar's neck and buried his face in the dog's fur. Both of them were shaking with emotion. "My boy," Tank sobbed. "My good boy. I thought I'd never see you again." Gunnar whimpered and licked Tank's face. The dog's tail wagged so hard it knocked over the water pitcher on the bedside table. Nobody cared about the spilled water. "I'm so sorry I left you," Tank cried. "I'm so sorry." Gunnar seemed to understand that Tank was sick. The dog was gentle and careful, pressing close, but not putting his full weight on the bed. Sarah, Dr. Rodriguez, and Maria watched from the doorway. All three of them had tears in their eyes. Other hospital staff began gathering in the hallway, drawn by the sounds of joy. "How did you find him?" Tank asked through his tears. Sarah explained about the search, the phone calls, and Maria's rescue. She told Tank how Gunnar had been waiting and hoping for 3 months. "He never gave up on you," Maria said, stepping forward. 3 families wanted to adopt him, but he wouldn't let them. His heart belonged to you. Tank looked at Maria with gratitude. "Thank you for taking care of him. Thank you for not giving up on him." "He took care of himself," Maria said. "He was just waiting for his family to come home." Tank ran his hands through Gunnar's fur, as if he couldn't believe the dog was real. Gunnar leaned into Tank's touch, his eyes closed with happiness. "I missed you so much," Tank whispered. "Every single day. I was so scared you wouldn't understand why I left." Dr. Rodriguez checked Tank's vital signs. Amazingly, Tank's heart rate had improved. His breathing seemed easier. Having Gunnar close was actually helping his medical condition. "Can he stay?" Tank asked hopefully. "Just for a little while?" Dr. Rodriguez looked around at the other staff members. They were all smiling and nodding. "I think we can make an exception," Dr. Rodriguez said. "For medical reasons, of course." Gunnar seemed to understand that he was allowed to stay. He settled down on a blanket beside Tank's bed, but he kept one paw touching the mattress. He wasn't going to let Tank out of his sight. Again, Tank reached down to pet Gunnar's head. The dog looked up at him with eyes full of love and forgiveness. "We're together again," Tank said softly. "Whatever happens next, we're together." For the first time in weeks, Tank smiled a real smile. The pain was still there, and he was still very sick. But he had his best friend back. Gunnar rested his head on his paws, but kept his eyes open, watching Tank. The loyal dog had waited 3 months for this moment. He wasn't going to waste a second of it sleeping. Other patients began visiting Tank's room to meet Gunnar. The dog brought joy to the entire hospital ward. Children pointed and giggled. Elderly patients smiled and shared stories about their own pets. But for Tank and Gunnar, the rest of the world faded away. They only saw each other. The reunion that seemed impossible had happened. Love had brought them back together. But Tank was still dying. Their time together was precious and limited. Every moment was a gift they thought they'd lost forever. Over the next 3 days, Gunnar never left Tank's side. The German Shepherd slept on a thick blanket beside Tank's hospital bed. Hospital rules usually kept pets away, but Dr. Rodriguez had made this an official exception. "It's medical therapy," Dr. Rodriguez explained to other doctors. "This dog is better medicine than anything we have in our pharmacy." Tank's health seemed to improve with Gunnar nearby. His breathing was easier. He ate more food. The terrible sadness in his eyes was replaced by moments of joy. Having his best friend back gave Tank strength he didn't know he still had. Every morning, Tank would wake up and see Gunnar watching him with loving brown eyes. The dog never moved from his spot during the night. He was making sure Tank didn't disappear again. "Good morning, boy," Tank would whisper, reaching down to scratch behind Gunnar's ears. Gunnar would wag his tail and gently lick Tank's hand. Then the dog would rest his head on the bed. as close to Tank as possible. They spent hours together talking. Well, Tank talked and Gunnar listened. Tank told stories about their adventures on the streets. He talked about the funny things Gunnar used to do. He reminded the dog about all the good times they shared. "Remember when you found that whole pizza in the dumpster behind Tony's restaurant?" Tank asked with a smile. "You could have eaten the whole thing yourself, but you brought it to me first." Gunnar's tail wagged at the memory. Dogs remembered emotions even when they couldn't understand all the words. "You always took care of me," Tank continued. "Even when you were hungry too." Sarah visited them several times each day. She brought Gunnar fresh water and dog treats. She also brought Tank news about the outside world. "Your story is spreading," Sarah told Tank on Wednesday morning. "The news report has been shared thousands of times on Facebook. People all over the country are talking about you and Gunnar." Tank was amazed. "People really care about us?" "They care about love," Sarah said. "Everyone understands the bond between you and Gunnar. It gives people hope." Dr. Rodriguez stopped by to check on Tank's progress. He was surprised by how much Tank had improved since Gunnar's arrival. "Your blood pressure is better," Dr. Rodriguez told Tank. "Your heart rate is more stable. Having Gunnar here is actually helping your body heal." Tank wasn't surprised. "He's always been my medicine," Tank said, petting Gunnar's head. "When I had bad dreams, he would wake me up. When I felt sad, he would make me laugh. Gunnar kept me alive on the streets." Maria Santos from Second Chance Animal Rescue visited every day. She brought Gunnar's favorite toys from the shelter. She also brought news that would change everything. "Tank," Maria said carefully on Thursday afternoon, "there's something important I need to tell you about Gunnar's time at our rescue." Tank looked worried. "What is it?" Maria sat down in the chair beside Tank's bed. Gunnar lifted his head, sensing the serious tone in her voice. "A very wealthy family wanted to adopt Gunnar," Maria began. "The Johnsons from Scottsdale. They have a beautiful house with a huge yard. They offered to give Gunnar everything money could buy." Tank's face fell. He knew he couldn't compete with wealthy people who could give Gunnar a perfect life. "But Gunnar refused," Maria continued quickly. "He wouldn't bond with them at all. He wouldn't eat their expensive dog food. He wouldn't play with the toys they bought him. He wouldn't even sleep in the comfortable bed they made for him." Tank looked down at Gunnar in amazement. The dog looked back at him with steady, loyal eyes. After 2 weeks, the Johnsons brought him back to our rescue, Maria said. Mrs. Johnson was crying. She said they really wanted to help Gunnar, but he was too sad to love them back. Tank felt overwhelmed by his dog's loyalty. Gunnar could have lived in luxury, but he chose to wait for Tank instead. "He was waiting for you," Maria said softly. "Even when he could have had everything, he chose to wait for his best friend." Tank buried his face in Gunnar's fur. The dog had given up comfort and security to stay faithful to their bond. "I don't deserve you," Tank whispered. Gunnar seemed to disagree. He licked Tank's face and wagged his tail. As the days passed, Tank and Gunnar developed a new routine at the hospital. Tank would feed Gunnar treats from his breakfast tray. They would watch TV together, with Gunnar's head resting on the bed. During Tank's afternoon naps, Gunnar would lie perfectly still, guarding his sleep. The most amazing thing was how Gunnar helped other patients in the hospital. When Tank felt strong enough, they would walk slowly through the halls together. Gunnar's calm presence brought smiles to everyone they met. In the children's ward, Gunnar was especially gentle. He would sit quietly while young patients petted his soft fur. The dog seemed to know that these children were sick and needed extra care. "He's like a therapy dog," said Dr. Jennifer Walsh, who worked in pediatrics. "Some of our children have been asking when Gunnar will visit again." Tank felt proud watching Gunnar comfort other people. The dog had a gift for knowing exactly what each person needed. One elderly woman named Ruth was dying of heart failure. She hadn't spoken to anyone in days. But when Gunnar walked into her room, Ruth's face lit up. "Beautiful dog," Ruth whispered, the first words she had said all week. Gunnar gently placed his head on Ruth's bed. She petted him with shaking hands, and for a few minutes, she forgot about her pain. "Animals understand suffering," Tank told Sarah. "Gunnar knows what it's like to hurt. That's why he's so good at helping people feel better." Tank also learned more about what Gunnar had experienced at the rescue. Maria shared stories about the dog's depression and hope. "He would sit by the front gate every morning," Maria told Tank, "like he was watching for you to come back." When men around your age walked by, Gunnar would get excited and run to the fence. Tank felt guilty all over again. "He was looking for me." "He never stopped believing you would return," Maria said. "That kind of faith is rare." Tank realized that Gunnar's love was completely unconditional. The dog didn't care that Tank was homeless. He didn't care that Tank was dying. Gunnar just wanted to be with his best friend. "You could have had a mansion," Tank told Gunnar, "but you chose me instead." Gunnar's response was to move closer to Tank's bed. The dog didn't care about houses or money. He cared about love. But even in these happy moments, Tank knew his time was running out. The cancer was still growing. His body was still failing. Soon, he would have to say goodbye to Gunnar forever. The thought terrified him more than dying itself. What would happen to Gunnar when Tank was gone? Tank's health took a turn for the worse on Friday morning. He woke up coughing badly, and his breathing was more difficult than ever. Dr. Rodriguez ordered new tests, but Tank already knew what they would show. The cancer was winning. As Tank lay in his hospital bed, weak and tired, one thought consumed his mind. What would happen to Gunnar when he died? Tank couldn't bear the idea of Gunnar going back to Second Chance Animal Rescue. The dog had already suffered through 3 months of separation. He had been heartbroken and depressed, waiting for someone who almost never came back. "I can't put him through that again," Tank whispered to Gunnar, who was lying beside his bed, as always. Gunnar seemed to sense Tank's worry. The dog moved closer and rested his head on Tank's arm, offering comfort. Tank had been thinking about this problem for days. He had no family to take care of Gunnar. His parents died years ago. He never married or had children. His army buddies had their own families and problems. Tank had no money to leave for Gunnar's care. "What am I going to do with you, boy?" Tank asked sadly. Sarah knocked on the door and came in with Tank's lunch. She could see the worry on his face immediately. "What's wrong, Tank?" Sarah asked, setting down the food tray. Tank explained his fears about Gunnar's future. Sarah listened carefully, her heart breaking for both of them. "I could adopt Gunnar," Sarah offered. "I've grown to love him these past few days." Tank appreciated Sarah's kindness, but he had concerns. "You work long hours at the hospital," Tank said gently. "Gunnar needs someone who can be home more often. He's been abandoned too many times already." Sarah understood. Taking care of a dog properly required time and attention that her nursing schedule didn't allow. Dr. Rodriguez arrived to check on Tank's condition. When he heard about their conversation, he joined the discussion. "There are several good families who have contacted the hospital," Dr. Rodriguez said. "Your story on the news made people want to help. Many families have offered to adopt Gunnar." Tank shook his head. "Gunnar doesn't do well with new families. He's tried that already. His heart is too loyal." Tank had been watching Gunnar interact with other patients at the hospital. The dog was wonderful with sick people, but he stayed distant from healthy visitors. Gunnar seemed to understand pain and suffering in a special way. What if Gunnar could help other people like he helped me? Tank asked suddenly. Dr. Rodriguez looked interested. What do you mean? Tank's voice got stronger as the idea formed. Gunnar is naturally good at comforting people who are hurting. What if he could work with other veterans who have problems like mine? Dr. Rodriguez nodded thoughtfully. Service dogs and therapy dogs can make a huge difference for veterans with PTSD. Gunnar already has many of the right qualities. Tank got excited about this possibility. If Gunnar couldn't stay with him, maybe the dog could have an important job helping other soldiers who were struggling. He's calm and protective, Tank said. He's loyal and smart. He understands when people are in pain. Sarah pulled out her phone and started searching for information. There are programs that train dogs to help veterans, she said. Let me make some calls. Over the next few hours, Sarah contacted several organizations in Phoenix. Most of them were interested in Gunnar's story, but they had long waiting lists for new dogs. Then Sarah called the Veterans Community Living Center, a program that helped homeless veterans find housing and support. The director, Linda Martinez, was very interested in Gunnar. We've been looking for a therapy dog for our program, Linda told Sarah over the phone. A dog with Gunnar's background could really connect with our clients. Sarah explained Gunnar's loyalty, his training, and his natural ability to comfort people. Linda wanted to meet them as soon as possible. Tank felt hopeful for the first time in days. If Gunnar can't be with me, at least he could have a purpose, Tank told Dr. Rodriguez. He could help other veterans who feel lost, like I did. But Tank still worried about one thing. Would Gunnar be happy helping strangers, or would he always be looking for Tank? That afternoon, Linda Martinez came to the hospital with 2 other staff members from the Veterans Community Living Center. Tank was impressed by their dedication to helping homeless veterans. We work with about 50 veterans right now, Linda explained. Many of them struggle with PTSD, depression, and addiction. A therapy dog could make a real difference in their lives. Linda met Gunnar and was amazed by his calm, intelligent behavior. The dog seemed to understand that these were good people who wanted to help veterans. He would live with one of our staff members, Linda said, but he would spend his days at our center, working with veterans who need support. Tank liked this idea, but he wanted to know more about who would take care of Gunnar at home. Our best option would be Colonel Robert Mitchell, Linda said. He's a retired Army officer who runs a therapy dog program. He understands the bond between soldiers and their dogs. Tank's eyes lit up. Working with a retired Army officer sounded perfect. Someone who understood military service and the importance of loyalty. Colonel Mitchell lost his own dog last year, Linda continued. He's been looking for the right animal to help him continue his work with veterans. Sarah arranged for Colonel Mitchell to visit the hospital the next day. Tank wanted to meet the man who might become Gunnar's new owner. That night, Tank lay awake thinking about his decision. He wanted Gunnar to have a good life after he was gone, but he also wanted the dog to have important work to do. You saved my life on the streets, Tank whispered to Gunnar in the dark hospital room. Maybe you can save other veterans too. Gunnar's tail thumped softly against his blanket. The dog seemed to understand that something important was being decided. Tank made peace with his choice. If Colonel Mitchell was the right person, Tank would ask him to adopt Gunnar. The dog would have a home and a mission. He would help other veterans heal from their invisible wounds. You're going to help a lot of people, boy, Tank told Gunnar. Just like you helped me. Tank felt proud thinking about Gunnar's future. The dog, who had been abandoned and heartbroken, would become a healer for other broken soldiers. But first, Tank had to make sure Colonel Mitchell was worthy of Gunner's loyalty and love. The next day would bring answers to Tank's prayers. Saturday. Morning brought unexpected visitors to Tank's hospital room. Lisa Kim, a reporter from KPHO-TV, arrived with her camera crew to film a follow-up story about Tank and Gunner's reunion. "Our first story about your search for Gunner got such a strong response," Lisa explained as her cameraman set up equipment. "People want to know how you're doing now that you're together again." Tank was nervous about being on television, but Sarah encouraged him to share his story. "People need to hear about the bond between veterans and their animals," Sarah said. Lisa sat beside Tank's bed, while Gunner lay calmly on his blanket. The German Shepherd seemed to understand that something important was happening. His brown eyes were alert, but peaceful. "Tell us about what Gunner means to you," Lisa said when the camera started rolling. Tank looked down at his loyal friend. "This dog saved my life," he said, his voice strong despite his illness. "When I had nothing left in this world, I had him. That was enough to keep me going." Tank talked about their life on the streets. He explained how Gunner protected him from danger and shared food when they were hungry. He described the dog's loyalty and love during the hardest times of his life. "Gunner never judged me for being homeless," Tank said. "He didn't care that I couldn't give him a fancy house or expensive toys. He just wanted to be with me." The interview was touching and honest. Tank's words came from his heart, and viewers could see the deep love between him and Gunner. "What message do you want people to know?" Lisa asked. Tank thought carefully before answering. "Don't give up on love," he said. "Sometimes the most important relationships come when you least expect them. Gunner found me when I needed him most." After the news crew left, Tank felt good about sharing his story. Maybe it would help other people understand the special bond between humans and animals. The story aired on KPHO-TV that evening during the 6 o'clock news. But something amazing happened that Tank didn't expect. The story went viral on social media. Sarah checked Facebook and Twitter on her phone. "Tank, you're not going to believe this," she said excitedly. "Thousands of people are sharing your story. The video has been watched over 100,000 times already." Comments poured in from across the country. Veterans shared their own stories about animals that helped them heal. Pet owners talked about the unconditional love of their dogs and cats. Families were touched by Tank and Gunner's loyalty to each other. But the story reached someone very special who lived just 30 minutes away in Scottsdale. Lieutenant Colonel Robert Mitchell, retired, was eating dinner at his quiet home when the news story came on his television. The 72-year-old Vietnam veteran stopped eating and watched carefully. Colonel Mitchell had served 3 tours in Vietnam from 1968 to 1971. He came home with invisible wounds that took years to heal. His German Shepherd, Duke, had been his constant companion and therapist for 15 years. When Duke died 6 months ago, Colonel Mitchell was heartbroken. He had started an organization called Battle Buddy Dogs to help other veterans, but he hadn't found the right dog to continue his personal mission. As Colonel Mitchell watched Tank and Gunner on television, he saw something special. Gunner's TD's calm intelligence and protective nature reminded him of Duke. More importantly, he could see the dog's natural ability to comfort people in pain. "That's a special animal," Colonel Mitchell said to himself. After the news story ended, Colonel Mitchell called the hospital immediately. He spoke with Sarah and explained his background and his organization. "I run a nonprofit that trains rescue dogs to help veterans with PTSD," Colonel Mitchell told Sarah. "When I saw Gunner's story, I knew he could be perfect for our program." Sarah was excited to hear from Colonel Mitchell. This was exactly what Tank had hoped for. Someone who understood both dogs and veterans. Tank is looking for the right person to care for Gunnar when he passes away, Sarah explained. He wants Gunnar to have a purpose, not just a home. I understand completely, Colonel Mitchell said. Could I visit them tomorrow? I'd like to meet both Tank and Gunnar. Sarah arranged for Colonel Mitchell to come to the hospital Sunday afternoon. She didn't tell Tank all the details yet. She wanted him to meet the colonel and decide for himself. Meanwhile, the news story continued spreading online. By Sunday morning, it had been shared over 200,000 times. News stations in other cities picked up the story. Tank and Gunnar were becoming famous across America. People love stories about loyalty and second chances, Dr. Rodriguez told Tank. Your story gives people hope. Tank was amazed that so many strangers cared about him and Gunnar. He received dozens of cards and letters from viewers. Some people sent money to help with his medical bills. Others offered to adopt Gunnar. But Tank was most interested in meeting Colonel Mitchell. Sarah had told him a little about the retired officer's work with therapy dogs. He sounds like the right kind of person, Tank said hopefully. Someone who understands what Gunnar and I have been through. Sunday afternoon arrived, and Sarah prepared Tank for his important visitor. She helped him sit up straighter in bed and made sure Gunnar was clean and well-groomed. Colonel Mitchell arrived promptly at 2 o'clock. He was a tall, distinguished man with gray hair and kind blue eyes. Despite being in his 70s, he moved with military precision. Tank liked Colonel Mitchell immediately. The older veteran reminded him of his drill sergeant from basic training, tough but caring. More importantly, Tank could see that Colonel Mitchell understood the bond between soldiers and their dogs. Sergeant Thompson, Colonel Mitchell said, offering his hand to Tank. It's an honor to meet you. Tank was touched that Colonel Mitchell called him by his military rank. It had been years since anyone acknowledged his service. Colonel Mitchell's own story was remarkable. He had come home from Vietnam, angry and confused. His German Shepherd Duke had helped him learn to trust and love again. When Duke died, Colonel Mitchell started Battle Buddy Dogs to help other veterans find the same healing. I've worked with dozens of therapy dogs over the years, Colonel Mitchell told Tank. But Gunnar has something special. I can see it in his eyes. Colonel Mitchell knelt down beside Gunnar's blanket. The dog looked at him with calm interest, but didn't move away from Tank's bed. He's loyal, Colonel Mitchell observed. But he's also gentle. Those are the two most important qualities for therapy work. Tank watched Colonel Mitchell interact with Gunnar. The dog seemed to approve of the older veteran. Gunnar's tail wagged slightly, showing interest without abandoning his post beside Tank. Would you like to hear about my program? Colonel Mitchell asked Tank. Tank nodded eagerly. He wanted to know everything about Gunnar's potential future. Colonel Mitchell pulled up a chair beside Tank's bed and began explaining his program. Battle Buddy Dogs operates from my ranch in Scottsdale, he said. We rescue dogs from shelters and train them to help veterans with PTSD, depression, and other challenges. Tank listened carefully as Colonel Mitchell described the work. The dogs lived with volunteer families, but spent their days at the ranch, working with veterans who needed support. Gunnar would live with me personally, Colonel Mitchell explained. My house has a big yard and plenty of space, but during the day, he would help other veterans learn to trust and heal. Tank liked this idea immediately. Gunnar would have a good home and important work to do. Tell me about the veterans you help, Tank said. Colonel Mitchell's face grew serious. We work with soldiers coming back from Iraq and Afghanistan, young men and women who have seen terrible things. Many of them feel lost and alone, just like you did. Tank understood that feeling completely. Coming home from war was often harder than being in combat. The dogs helped them feel safe again. Colonel Mitchell continued, "Animals don't judge. They don't ask questions about what happened overseas. They just offer love and loyalty." Tank looked down at Gunner, who was listening to their conversation with alert ears. The dog seemed to understand they were talking about his future. "I'd want to help train him," Tank said. "Nobody knows Gunner better than I do." "I was hoping you'd say that," Colonel Mitchell smiled. "Even from your hospital bed, you could teach us about Gunner's personality and commands." Over the next hour, Tank and Colonel Mitchell worked with Gunner together. Tank showed the colonel how Gunner responded to different commands and situations. "Watch this," Tank said. He pretended to have trouble breathing, something that happened often because of his cancer. Immediately, Gunner stood up and pressed close to Tank's side. The dog's presence was calming and protective. "He knows when I'm in distress," Tank explained. "He's been taking care of me for years." Colonel Mitchell was impressed. That's exactly what veterans need. A companion who understands pain and offers comfort. Tank agreed to let Colonel Mitchell adopt Gunner. They shook hands on the agreement, both men understanding the importance of the moment. But while Tank and Colonel Mitchell were making plans, something remarkable was happening with Tank's medical condition. Dr. Rodriguez had been quietly monitoring Tank's health since Gunner's return. The results were shocking. Dr. Rodriguez sat in his office, staring at Tank's latest test results. The cancer tumor had shrunk by 30% in just 1 week. Tank's lung function was improving. His heart was stronger. Dr. Rodriguez had been practicing medicine for 20 years, but he had never seen anything like this. Tank's reunion with Gunner seemed to be helping his body fight the cancer. The doctor knew about the healing power of love and hope. He had seen patients improve when they had something to live for. But Tank's improvement was beyond what medical science could easily explain. Dr. Rodriguez decided to keep this information secret for now. He wanted to order more tests to be absolutely certain. If Tank's cancer was really responding this well to treatment, it would change everything. Meanwhile, Tank continued preparing Gunner for his new life with Colonel Mitchell. The dog was learning to work with other people while staying loyal too. Colonel Mitchell brought other veterans to meet Gunner. The first visitor was Staff Sergeant Jennifer Walsh, who had lost her right leg in an explosion in Iraq. She now used a wheelchair and struggled with depression. Gunner approached Jennifer's wheelchair carefully. He sat beside her without being asked, offering quiet companionship. "He's beautiful," Jennifer said, petting Gunner's soft fur. "He feels so calm." "Dogs don't see disabilities," Tank told Jennifer. "They just see people who need love." Jennifer smiled for the first time in months. Gunner's gentle presence helped her feel safe and accepted. The second visitor was Marine Corporal David Kim, who had served 2 tours in Afghanistan. David struggled with anxiety and panic attacks. Loud noises and crowds made him afraid. When David entered Tank's hospital room, he was visibly nervous. His hands shook, and he kept looking toward the door like he wanted to escape. Gunner seemed to sense David's fear. The dog moved slowly toward the young Marine and lay down at his feet. Gunner's calm breathing and steady presence helped David. "Relax. I haven't felt this peaceful in months," David admitted. "There's something special about this dog." Tank watched these interactions with pride. Gunner had a gift for understanding people's emotional needs. The dog would be perfect for helping other veterans heal. Colonel Mitchell was equally impressed. "Gunner has natural therapy instincts," he told Tank. "Most dogs need months of training to develop these skills." "He learned by taking care of me," Tank said. "Life on the streets taught him how to read people and situations." Tank felt good about his decision. Gunner would have a loving home with Colonel Mitchell and meaningful work helping other veterans. It was the perfect solution. But Tank still didn't know about Dr. Rodriguez's secret discovery. The doctor was waiting for more test results before sharing the incredible news. Tank's cancer was responding to treatment better than anyone had hoped. The reunion with Gunner had given Tank something powerful to fight for: time with his beloved friend. Sarah Chen was also keeping a secret. She had been researching Tank's military service and discovered something amazing. Tank had been recommended for a Silver Star Medal 15 years ago, but the paperwork had been lost in military bureaucracy. A fellow soldier Tank had saved in Afghanistan was now a general. When General David Foster saw Tank's story on the news, he recognized his old medic and contacted the Pentagon about the missing medal. Sarah didn't want to tell Tank about the medal until it was official, but the possibility that Tank might receive recognition for his heroic service excited her. As the week continued, Tank grew stronger instead of weaker. His breathing improved. His appetite returned. He was able to sit up for longer periods and even take short walks with Gunner in the hospital hallways. Dr. Rodriguez knew he couldn't keep the medical news secret much longer. Tank deserved to know that his condition was improving dramatically. The reunion that was supposed to be a final goodbye was becoming something much more hopeful. But Tank still believed he was dying. He continued making arrangements for Gunner's future, not knowing that they might have much more time together than anyone expected. The biggest surprise was yet to come. Dr. Rodriguez couldn't wait any longer. Tank's latest test results were too incredible to keep secret. The doctor walked into Tank's room Tuesday morning with a huge smile on his face and a folder full of medical reports. "Tank, I have some amazing news," Dr. Rodriguez said, sitting down beside the bed. Tank looked up from petting Gunner. He had been feeling stronger lately, but he thought it was just temporary. "What is it, Doc?" Tank asked. Dr. Rodriguez opened the folder and showed Tank his test results. "Your cancer is responding to treatment in a remarkable way. The tumor has shrunk by 60% in the past 2 weeks." Tank stared at the doctor in shock. "What does that mean?" "It means you're not dying," Dr. Rodriguez said with emotion in his voice. "Your body is fighting the cancer and winning. With continued treatment, you could have months or even years ahead of you." Tank couldn't believe what he was hearing. "Are you sure?" "I've run the tests 3 times, Dr. Rodriguez said. "Your lung function is improving. Your heart is stronger. Even your blood work looks better than it has in months." Tank started crying. Gunner seemed to sense his owner's emotions and moved closer to the bed. "But how is this possible?" Tank asked through his tears. Dr. Rodriguez smiled. "I believe having Gunner back gave you something powerful to fight for. Love really can heal, Tank. Your reunion with Gunner sparked your body's ability to recover." Sarah Chen had been listening from the doorway. She came into the room with her own exciting news. "Tank, there's something else," Sarah said, holding an official-looking envelope. "This came for you from the Department of the Army." Tank opened the envelope with shaking hands. Inside was a letter with the Army's official seal. "Dear Sergeant Thompson," Tank read aloud, "you are hereby notified that you have been awarded the Silver Star for gallantry in action during combat operations in Afghanistan." Tank's voice broke as he continued reading. The letter explained that his heroic actions as a combat medic had saved the lives of 6 soldiers during a Taliban attack in 2008. One of those soldiers, now General David Foster, had been working for years to make sure Tank received proper recognition. "A Silver Star?" Tank whispered. "I can't believe it." Sarah explained how General Foster had seen Tank's story on the news and contacted the Pentagon. The general had never forgotten the medic who saved his life 15 years ago. "You're a hero, Tank," Sarah said. "You always were. The army just took too long to tell you." Tank looked at the medal citation, then at Gunnar, then at his medical reports. A month ago, he was a dying homeless man with no hope. Now he was a decorated veteran with a future. "This changes everything," Tank said quietly. Dr. Rodriguez nodded. "You're still very sick, but you're not terminal anymore. You can beat this cancer." Tank's mind raced with possibilities. If he wasn't dying, he didn't have to give up Gunnar. They could stay together and build a new life. But Tank had already made a promise to Colonel Mitchell. The retired officer was planning to adopt Gunnar and include him in the therapy dog program. Tank didn't want to break his word. Colonel Mitchell arrived that afternoon for his regular visit. Tank showed him the medical results and the army letter. "This is wonderful news," Colonel Mitchell said sincerely. "You and Gunnar can stay together after all." "But what about your program?" Tank asked. "You were counting on Gunnar to help other veterans." Colonel Mitchell smiled. "Tank, I have a proposal. What if you and Gunnar both joined Battle Buddy Dogs?" Tank looked confused. "What do you mean?" "You have experience as a combat medic," Colonel Mitchell explained. "You understand PTSD and veteran issues. Your story of recovery could inspire other veterans who feel hopeless." Colonel Mitchell outlined his idea. Tank could live at the ranch facility and help train therapy dogs. His medical background would be valuable for working with veterans who had both physical and mental injuries. "You'd have a home, a job, and a purpose," Colonel Mitchell said, "and you'd never have to leave Gunnar again." Tank was overwhelmed by the generous offer. It was more than he had ever dreamed possible. "You mean we could work together?" Tank asked. "Gunnar and I could help other veterans as a team?" "Exactly," Colonel Mitchell said. "Your bond with Gunnar is what makes both of you special. Together, you could show other veterans that healing is possible." To return, Tank looked at Gunnar, who was listening to their conversation with alert ears. The dog seemed to approve of the plan. "What do you think, boy?" Tank asked. "Want to help some more soldiers?" Gunnar's tail wagged enthusiastically. Sarah organized a small celebration in Tank's hospital room. Dr. Rodriguez brought cake from the cafeteria. Several nurses stopped by to hear the good news. Even Maria Santos from the animal rescue came to celebrate. "1 month ago, you were dying alone," Sarah said to Tank. "Now look at you! You have your health improving, your best friend back, and a bright future ahead." Tank gave a short speech thanking everyone who had helped him and Gunnar. "I learned that miracles are real," he said. "Sometimes they come with 4 legs and a tail. Sometimes they come from people who care enough to help strangers," Tank continued, looking at Sarah, Dr. Rodriguez, and Maria. "You all saved my life." Tank signed the paperwork to join Battle Buddy Dogs that evening. He and Gunnar would start their new life together in 1 week after Tank finished his cancer treatment at the hospital. "We're going to help a lot of people," Tank told Gunnar as they settled down for the night. "Veterans who feel as lost as we did." Gunnar curled up on his blanket, but he kept one paw touching Tank's bed. Even with all the good news, the dog wasn't taking any chances. He was going to make sure Tank didn't disappear again. Tank lay in his hospital bed, looking at his Silver Star citation and his improving medical reports. 6 weeks ago, he was homeless and hopeless. Now he had a home, a purpose, and most importantly, his best friend. "Thank you," Tank whispered to whatever force had brought them back together. "Thank you for giving us a second chance." Outside his window, the Phoenix Desert stretched toward the mountains. Tank had slept under those stars for 2 years, cold and afraid. Now he was looking toward a future filled with warmth and hope. The reunion that was supposed to be a final goodbye had become the beginning of a new life for both Tank and Gunner. Together, they would heal others the same way they had healed each other, with unconditional love and unwavering loyalty. Tank's final day at Phoenix Veterans Medical Center was filled with mixed emotions. The hospital staff had become like family over the past 6 weeks. Sarah Chen had become more than a nurse. She was the angel who made Tank's miracle possible. "I can't thank you enough," Tank told Sarah as she helped him pack his few belongings. "You saved both our lives." Sarah smiled and hugged Tank gently. "You and Gunner saved each other. I just made some phone calls." Tank was wearing new clothes donated by viewers who had seen his story on television. For the first time in years, he looked healthy and hopeful. His cancer was still there, but it was shrinking with each treatment. Gunner was excited to leave the hospital. The German Shepherd had been a wonderful therapy dog for other patients, but he was ready for his next adventure with Tank. Dr. Rodriguez came to say goodbye. "Keep taking your medications," he told Tank, "and come back for your checkups. We want to see you stay healthy." "I will," Tank promised. "I have too much to live for now." Colonel Mitchell arrived with his pickup truck to take Tank and Gunner to their new home. The Battle Buddy Dogs facility was 30 minutes away in Scottsdale, but it felt like they were traveling to a different world. As they drove through Phoenix, Tank pointed out places where he and Gunner used to sleep: the Central Avenue Bridge, Steele Indian School Park, doorways of closed shops. "I never thought I'd see this city from inside a vehicle again," Tank told Colonel Mitchell. "For 2 years, these streets were our whole world." Colonel Mitchell understood. He had been homeless briefly after returning from Vietnam. "Sometimes you have to lose everything to find what really matters," he said. The Battle Buddy Dogs Ranch sat on 10 acres of desert land surrounded by mountains. Tank saw kennels, training areas, and a comfortable house where Colonel Mitchell lived. There were also 2 smaller buildings for staff housing. "That one's yours," Colonel Mitchell said, pointing to a small apartment attached to the main facility. "You and Gunner will have your own space, but you'll be close to the work." Tank's apartment was simple, but perfect. 1 bedroom, a small kitchen, and a living room with a sliding door that opened to a fenced yard. After years of sleeping on concrete, having a real bed felt like luxury. "This is ours, boy," Tank told Gunner as they explored their new home. "Our own place." Gunner sniffed every corner of the apartment, then settled on a soft dog bed by the window. From there, he could watch the desert and keep an eye on Tank. Colonel Mitchell introduced Tank to the other staff members. Most of them were veterans who had found healing through working with animals. They welcomed Tank warmly and shared their own stories of recovery. Tank's first week at Battle Buddy Dogs was spent learning about the program. He studied how dogs were trained to help veterans with different problems. Some dogs helped with mobility issues. Others provided emotional support during panic attacks. "Each veteran needs something different," explained Lisa Chen, the program's head trainer. "Our job is to match the right dog with the right person." Tank's medical background proved valuable immediately. He understood the physical and mental challenges that veterans faced. His experience with PTSD helped him connect with veterans who were struggling. Gunner excelled in his new role. The dog's calm intelligence and protective nature made him perfect for helping traumatized veterans. His training with Tank had prepared him well for this important work. The first veteran Tank and Gunner worked with was Marine Sergeant Carlos Valdez. Carlos had lost both arms in an explosion in Iraq. He was learning to use prosthetic limbs, but he struggled with depression and anger. "I don't see how a dog can help me," Carlos said when he first met Tank and Gunnar. Tank understood Carlos's frustration. "I felt the same way about everything after I came home from Afghanistan," Tank said. "But Gunnar taught me that some wounds heal better with a friend beside you." Gunnar approached Carlos slowly and sat beside his wheelchair. The dog didn't try to get attention. He just offered quiet companionship. Over several sessions, Carlos began to trust Gunnar. The dog learned to help Carlos with daily tasks and provided comfort during difficult moments. "He doesn't look at me like I'm broken," Carlos told Tank after 2 weeks. "He just sees me as his friend." Tank and Gunnar also worked with Army Sergeant Michelle Thompson, who struggled with nightmares from military sexual assault. Michelle had trouble sleeping and didn't trust many people. Gunnar's protective presence helped Michelle feel safe for the first time in months. The dog would lie beside her bed during therapy sessions, alert but calm. "He makes me feel like someone's watching out for me," Michelle said. "Someone who won't hurt me." Tank watched Gunnar work with each veteran and felt incredibly proud. His dog was saving lives, just like Tank had done as a combat medic in Afghanistan. Word about Tank and Gunnar's success spread quickly. Other veterans came to battle buddy dogs specifically requesting to work with them. Their story of homelessness, separation, and reunion gave hope to people who felt hopeless. Tank's own health continued to improve. The cancer was responding well to treatment. His regular schedule, good food, and sense of purpose were helping his body heal. "You look 10 years younger," Sarah Chen told Tank when she visited after a month. "This new life agrees with you." Tank had gained weight and color in his cheeks. His eyes were bright with purpose instead of dim with despair. "I have a reason to get up every morning," Tank said. "Gunnar and I are helping people who remind me of who I used to be." Tank's apartment filled with thank you cards from veterans and their families. Photos of successful therapy dog placements covered his refrigerator. Local news stations featured updates on Tank and Gunnar's work. But the most meaningful moment came when Tank received a letter from General David Foster, the soldier whose life he had saved in Afghanistan. "Sergeant Thompson," the letter read, "seeing your story on the news reminded me that heroes come in many forms. You saved my life in combat, and now you're saving lives at home. Thank you for your continued service." Tank read the letter to Gunnar, who listened with his usual patient attention. "We've come a long way from that bridge, haven't we, boy?" Tank said, scratching behind Gunnar's ears. The German shepherd's tail wagged in agreement. They had indeed traveled far from those cold nights under the Central Avenue Bridge, but the bond between them remained as strong as ever. Every evening, Tank and Gunnar would sit on their small porch, watching the Arizona sunset paint the desert mountains gold and red. They were no longer fighting for survival. Now they were fighting for other people's healing. Their new life had given them the greatest gift of all, the chance to turn their pain into purpose and their suffering into service. 6 months later, Tank Thompson stood in front of a room full of reporters at the Arizona State Capitol. He wore his dress uniform for the first time in 15 years, with his new Silver Star medal pinned to his chest. Gunnar sat beside him, in perfect military posture, wearing a special vest that read "Therapy Dog." Governor Katie Hobbs was presenting Tank with Arizona's highest civilian honor for his work with homeless veterans. The ceremony was being broadcast live across the state. "Sergeant Thompson represents the very best of Arizona's values," Governor Hobbs said. He turned his personal struggles into a mission of healing for others. Tank's transformation was remarkable. The sick, hopeless man from the hospital had become a confident advocate for veterans and their animals. His cancer remained in remission, and his doctors called his recovery miraculous. "6 months ago, I was dying alone under a bridge," Tank told the audience. "Today, I'm here because one nurse cared enough to keep a promise, and because love really can heal anything." The Battle Buddy Dogs program had grown rapidly since Tank and Gunner joined. They now helped over 100 veterans across Arizona. Tank had become the program's most effective counselor, using his own story to inspire hope in others. Sarah Chen sat in the front row, wiping away tears of pride. She had taken vacation time to attend the ceremony. Beside her sat Dr. Rodriguez, Maria Santos, and Colonel Mitchell. The team that had saved Tank and Gunner was together again. After the ceremony, Tank and Gunner visited Phoenix Veterans Medical Center. It was their monthly tradition. They brought therapy dogs to comfort current patients, just like Gunner had comforted Tank during his darkest hours. Tank walked into room 314, where his incredible journey had begun. A new patient lay in the bed. Staff Sergeant Angela Martinez, a young veteran struggling with depression after losing her leg in Iraq. "I don't want to see anyone," Angela said, when Tank knocked on her door. "I understand," Tank said gently. "I said the same thing when I was in this exact bed 6 months ago." Tank sat down beside Angela's bed. Gunner moved closer and rested his head near her hand. "This is Gunner," Tank said. "He saved my life when I thought there was nothing left to live for." Tank told Angela his story, about being homeless, about getting sick, about thinking he would die alone, about the nurse who kept her promise to find Gunner. "You're not alone," Tank said. "Even when it feels like the whole world has forgotten you, there are people who care. Sometimes they come when you least expect them." Angela reached out slowly and petted Gunner's head. The dog's calm presence began to ease her pain, just like it had eased Tank's. "Will you come back tomorrow?" Angela asked quietly. "We'll be here," Tank promised, "as long as you need us." That evening, Tank and Gunner returned to their apartment at Battle Buddy Dogs. Tank had received dozens of letters that day from veterans across the country. His story continued to spread hope wherever it was shared. One letter was particularly special. It came from the White House. "Dear Sergeant Thompson," Tank read aloud to Gunner, "your story of service, sacrifice, and recovery embodies the best of American values. You and Gunner represent the healing power of the human-animal bond." The letter was signed by President Biden himself, inviting Tank to speak at a national conference on veteran homelessness. Tank looked at the official White House letterhead in amazement. "Remember when we used to dream about having enough food for one day?" he asked Gunner. "Now we're invited to meet the president." Gunner wagged his tail, always ready for whatever adventure came next. Tank's phone rang. It was Sarah Chen, calling to congratulate him on the governor's award. "You've come so far," Sarah said. "I'm so proud of you both." "None of this would have happened without you," Tank replied. "You kept your promise when you didn't have to." Sarah had her own news. She was starting nursing school to become a nurse practitioner. Tank's story had inspired her to do even more for her patients. "You taught me that sometimes the smallest acts of kindness can change everything," Sarah said. Tank also received a call from General Foster in Washington, D.C. The general had been following Tank's work and had an interesting proposal. "The Army wants to create a national program based on what you're doing in Arizona," General Foster explained. "We want to help homeless veterans and their animals stay together." Tank was honored, but not surprised. His story had shown that the bond between veterans and their animals was often the key to healing. Tank walked outside to watch the sunset with Gunner. They sat on their porch, looking out at the desert mountains that had once seemed like prison walls, but now felt like protection. "Look how far we've come, boy," Tank said, scratching behind Gunner's ears. The German Shepherd leaned against Tank's leg, content and peaceful. They had both found their purpose. Tank thought about all the people who had helped them along the way. Sarah, who made the first phone call. Dr. Rodriguez, who never gave up on Tank's health. Maria, who cared for Gunner during their separation. Colonel Mitchell, who gave them both a new mission. Sometimes guardian angels wear scrubs, Tank said. Sometimes they run animal rescues. Sometimes they're retired colonels who understand that broken people and broken dogs can heal each other. Tank's story had become a symbol of hope for veterans across America. But for him, the most important part was simple. He and Gunner were together, helping others find the same healing they had discovered. Tank opened his laptop and began writing his weekly blog post for the Battle Buddy Dogs website. Thousands of people read his updates about veteran issues and animal therapy. This week, Gunner and I met a young veteran who thought her life was over, Tank typed. We told her the same thing I want to tell anyone who's reading this. Your story isn't finished yet. Sometimes the best chapters come after the worst ones. Tank looked down at Gunner, who was sleeping peacefully beside his chair. The dog's presence still brought Tank comfort every single day. 6 months ago, my dying wish was to see my dog one last time. Tank continued writing. Today, my living wish is to help as many veterans as possible find their own Gunner, whether that's a dog, a person, or just a reason to keep fighting. Tank's final words in the blog post came from his heart. Love is the only thing stronger than despair. Hope is the only thing stronger than fear. And sometimes, the family you need most walks on 4 legs and loves you unconditionally. Tank hit publish and closed his laptop. Tomorrow would bring new veterans to help, new stories to share, and new chances to spread hope. He and Gunner had gone from surviving under a bridge to thriving in service to others. Their pain had become their purpose. Their suffering had become their strength. The homeless veteran's dying wish had led to a lifetime of helping others live. Tank looked at his Silver Star medal on the table, then at Gunner sleeping peacefully beside him. Both represented service and sacrifice. Both represented love that never gives up. "Thank you, boy," Tank whispered to his sleeping friend. "Thank you for waiting for me. Thank you for never giving up on us." Gunner's tail thumped once against the floor, even in sleep. Their bond remained as strong as ever, unbreakable, unconditional, and eternal. Together, they had proven that miracles happen when love refuses to surrender. We'd love to hear from you. Let us know in the comments where you're listening from around the world. Your support means everything to us. If this story touched your heart, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for many more inspiring and heartwarming stories like this one. Most importantly, please share this video with your friends and family. Stories like Tank and Gunner's help spread kindness and awareness about important issues like veteran homelessness and the healing power of animals. Together, we can make a difference, one story at a time. Thank you for listening. And remember, sometimes the most beautiful chapters of our lives begin after the hardest ones. Until next time, keep spreading love and hope wherever you go.